The evening light cast a soft glow on the unassuming brick building as Janelle pulled into the nearly empty parking lot. She checked her phone for the time, 8:45 p.m. Perfect. With a deep breath, she stepped out of her car and approached the side door that read, "Night Shift Entrance." Janelle had just turned 21, and this was her first week working the graveyard shift at the call center. It was a job she'd taken to pay the bills while finishing her degree. "You're early," the security guard, Larry, said with a yawn, not bothering to hide his boredom. Janelle offered a smile in return, clutching her bag tightly. "Thanks for noticing." She'd hoped to make a good impression, even though she knew he wouldn't remember her name. Once inside, she walked down the dimly lit corridor, her footsteps echoing in the silence. The walls were painted a dull gray, with motivational posters that looked like they hadn't been updated since the 90s. The faint scent of stale coffee lingered in the air. Janelle found the break room, which was surprisingly cozy, with a few couches and a microwave that looked like it had seen better days. She sat down at one of the small tables, pulled out her phone, and sent a quick text to her roommate, Rachel. "Starting the night shift in 5. Wish me luck." Her phone buzzed with Rachel's response. "You got this, girl. Don't let the ghost of bad customer service haunt you. LOL. Janelle rolled her eyes and laughed. Rachel had a flair for the dramatic, but she had a point. Call centers had a reputation for strange occurrences during the quiet hours of the night. Janelle had heard whispers of odd things happening here, but she wasn't the superstitious type. Plus, she had read all the rules, all 4 of them, in detail. They were strange, sure, but she figured it was just the company's quirky way of keeping things interesting. Her trainer, Marcus, appeared in the doorway, coffee in hand, ready to tackle the night. His smile was forced, and his eyes had dark circles. "I've been here for the past 7 years, and it still doesn't get any easier." He handed Janelle a lanyard with her ID card. "You'll get the hang of it." As Janelle followed him to her designated workstation, she couldn't shake the feeling that the air had thickened, as if something was watching her. She knew it was probably just nerves, but the hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. Marcus sat her down and pointed to the computer screen, which displayed the call center's homepage. At the top, in bold letters, were the 4 rules she had studied. 1. No talking to colleagues during calls. 2. Do not, under any circumstance, leave your headset on while not on a call. 3. If you hear strange noises, do not investigate. 4. The last one to leave must turn off all lights. "Remember these," Marcus said, his tone more serious than she expected. "They're not just for fun. They're for everyone's safety." He paused, looking around the room before leaning closer. "And don't think you're being tough by breaking them. Trust me, you don't want to find out why they're there." Her first few calls were standard fare, a mix of complaints, queries, and the occasional confused customer who dialed the wrong number. Janelle's voice remained calm and professional, despite the creeping sense of unease that had settled in her chest. It was when she was about to take her first break that the strange buzzing started. She had just finished a call and was about to remove her headset when the static grew louder. Ignoring the noise, Janelle took a deep breath and picked up the next call. The customer's voice was faint at first, barely discernible through the static, but it grew stronger, resonating from within the walls themselves. "Can you hear me?" it asked, a low rumble that seemed to fill the room. She nodded, though she knew they couldn't see her, and responded, "Yes, I can hear you. How may I assist you tonight?" The voice grew clearer, though no less eerie. "It's about the whispers." Janelle's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't heard anyone mention whispers in the call center rumors. "What whispers?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. The voice sighed, a sound that seemed to come from the very fabric of the building. "The ones that come when you're all alone." The line went dead, leaving Janelle staring at the computer screen. She glanced around the room, but everyone else was busy with their own calls, oblivious to her distress. She shivered, her skin cold and clammy, and made a mental note to mention the call to Marcus during her break. As the hours ticked by, the whispers grew louder. She tried to ignore them, focusing on the customers' complaints and questions, but they were relentless. They seemed to come from the walls, the floor, even the very air around her. Janelle's eyes darted around, searching for the source, but she found nothing. Finally, her shift ended, and she was the last one to leave. She stood up, stretching her stiff muscles, and took one last look around the darkened room. The whispers had faded, leaving only the faint hum of the computers and the occasional flicker of a fluorescent light. Marcus met her at the door, his expression grim. "You heard them, didn't you?" he whispered. Janelle nodded. He handed her a piece of paper. "Rule 5, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "If you're the last one to leave, make sure you don't just turn off the lights." With a racing heart, Janelle took the paper and scanned the hastily scribbled words. "To prevent the whispers from following you home, recite the company slogan 3 times before you go." He offered a small smile. "It's a new rule. Not everyone gets it." The parking lot was quiet as Janelle stepped outside, the chill of the night air hitting her like a slap. She looked back at the building, the windows dark except for a single flickering light on the 3rd floor. The whispers had stopped, but she knew they were still there, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to break the rules. With a deep breath, she recited the slogan, feeling silly, but also a little less afraid. As she drove away, she couldn't help but wonder if the whispers had truly left the building, or if they had simply decided to follow her home. The next few nights at the call center were a blur of eerie voices and unexplained sounds. Each call brought a new piece of the puzzle, hinting at an event shrouded in darkness and pain. Janelle found herself Googling the company's history during her breaks, searching for any mention of a tragedy that could have left such a haunting legacy. The whispers grew clearer, more insistent, telling her of a fire that had swept through the building decades ago, claiming the lives of those trapped inside. One particularly unnerving call came from a man whose voice was filled with desperation. "They're trapped, you know," he said. "The ones who didn't make it out." Janelle's hand hovered over the disconnect button, but something held her back. "You have to help them," he pleaded, his voice crackling with emotion. "They're still here." Another night, a woman sobbed through her story of a lost child, her voice echoing with the raw pain of a mother's grief. "He was playing hide and seek," she whispered, the words barely audible through the static. "But he never came out." Janelle's heart ached for her, but she had no words to offer beyond the scripted responses she'd been trained to give. Marcus noticed Janelle's growing distress and pulled her aside one night. "Look, I know it's tough, but you've got to keep it together," he said, his eyes weary. "The whispers feed on fear. The more you let them get to you, the stronger they become." He handed her a set of earplugs. "Use these during your breaks. Sometimes, the quiet is worse than the calls." Janelle took the earplugs gratefully, feeling the weight of the unspoken rule number 5 pressing down on her. Each night, she grew more and more curious about the tragedy that had occurred here. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and the stories they told grew darker. The walls of the call center seemed to close in around her, whispering their secrets into her ear, and she began to feel as though she was part of something much larger than a simple night job. One night, as she walked to the restroom during a particularly slow shift, she noticed a door at the end of a rarely used corridor she had never seen before. It was a simple wooden door with a brass knob, not at all like the utilitarian metal ones that lined the rest of the hallway. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end again, but this time, she felt a pull towards the mysterious entry rather than away from it. She stepped closer, the whispers around her growing quieter as if they too were curious. Her hand reached out and turned the knob, the metal cold against her skin. The door creaked open to reveal a small, dusty room, filled with cobwebs and the faint scent of something long forgotten. The room was cluttered with old office supplies, but what caught Janelle's eye was the far corner, where a small, ornate desk sat beneath a single, flickering bulb. On the desk lay a leather-bound book, its pages yellowed with age. Her heart pounding, she approached the book and opened it gently. It was a logbook, filled with entries from the night shift employees who had come before her. The earliest dates went back to the time of the fire, each one recounting strange occurrences, eerie sounds, and the whispers that never ceased. As she read, she realized that the whispers weren't just random sounds, they were the echoes of the past, the voices of the lost souls trapped in the building. The final entry was recent, barely legible. It spoke of a child's laughter and a woman's pleading voice, begging for someone to find her son. The name at the bottom of the page was smudged, but Janelle could make out the first few letters, MAR. Her eyes snapped up to the flickering light, her mind racing. The whispers grew louder, the room seeming to pulse with the energy of the trapped spirits. She knew she had stumbled upon a clue to the call center's haunting past, and it was up to her to uncover the truth before she too became part of the never-ending night shift. With trembling hands, Janelle pushed aside the clutter, revealing a narrow staircase hidden behind a dusty curtain. The wooden steps groaned under her weight as she descended into the darkness below. Her flashlight beam danced over the peeling wallpaper, the brightness not quite reaching the corners. The staircase ended abruptly in front of a heavy metal door with a faded sign that read, Floor 3, Authorized Personnel Only. Janelle's curiosity outweighed her fear, and she pushed the door open, the hinges screeching in protest. The floor beyond was unlike anything she had seen before. The walls were charred black, the remnants of a fire that had ravaged the space. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and despair, the whispers now a cacophony in her ears. Desks were overturned, chairs melted into the floor, and the faint outline of a child's handprint was etched into a wall. Janelle's heart clenched as she took in the scene of horror that had been sealed away from the rest of the world. In the center of the room, she found what remained of the control center, the heart of the call center operations. The computers were ancient, the screens cracked and unreadable, but the console was still intact. There was a button with a label that read, Emergency Communications. Janelle's hand hovered over it, the whispers urging her to press it, to set them free. The whispers grew into a feverish chant, their voices swirling around her like a tornado of despair. Her hand moved to cover her ears, but something stopped her. Instead, she took a deep breath and reached for the button, her eyes squeezed shut. As her finger hovered just above it, she heard a new sound, clear and distinct amidst the chaos, a child's laughter, pure and untainted by the darkness. It grew louder, drowning out the whispers, filling her with a warmth she hadn't felt in weeks. Her eyes snapped open, and she knew what she had to do. The whispers had led her here for a reason, and it was time to give them the voice they had been denied for so long. She pressed the button, and the room went silent. The whispers stopped abruptly, replaced by the sound of static as the speakers around her crackled to life. Janelle took a step back, her heart racing, as she waited for whatever was about to happen next. For a moment, there was nothing. Just the hum of the old computers and the heavy silence that hung in the air. Then, through the speakers, a faint voice, high and childlike, called out, "Mommy." Janelle's eyes filled with tears as she realized she had found the missing piece of the puzzle. The whispers had been the cries for help from the lost child, trapped in the echoes of the fire. Marcus rushed into the room, his face a mask of shock. "What did you do?" he demanded. Janelle looked up at him, her expression determined. "I found them," she said, her voice shaking. "The whispers, they're real." She told him about the logbook, the hidden floor, and the button she had just pressed. Marcus paled, his hand shaking as he reached for the phone on his desk. "We have to tell someone," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. As they waited for the authorities to arrive, Janelle couldn't help but feel a strange sense of peace. The whispers had ceased, and the pressure in the air had lifted. She had done what she had set out to do, even if it had been unintentional. The spirits of the night shift had found their voice through her, and now, perhaps, they could finally rest. The sun began to rise, casting a warm glow through the dusty windows of the call center. Janelle looked around the room, her eyes lingering on the spot where she had heard the child's laughter. The shadows had retreated, and the room looked almost normal. The whispers were gone, but she knew she would never forget the chilling tales they had shared with her. The horror of their trapped existence had become a part of her, a reminder of the importance of listening to those who had no voice. As the first rays of light crept through the door, Janelle made her way back to her workstation, the echoes of the past now just a memory. Rachel's text from the first night came to mind, and she couldn't help but smile. "It's not the ghost of bad customer service you should worry about," she murmured to herself. "It's the ghosts of those who never got to leave." She grabbed her bag, ready to face the world outside the walls of the call center. Her job was to listen, and now she had a story that would stay with her forever.